Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Gnomon live stream for today's event, Exploring Environment and Visual Development Illustrations in Blender with our guest artist, Kendrick See. If you were watching the reel, we were just playing at the beginning. Gnomon is a 3D art school located in Hollywood, California, and we specialize in training artists for careers in animation, games, and visual effects. And that was a reel of the Gnomon campus, which we're very pleased to be able to say is going to be open in the fall for the fall term for in-person learning. We've been having a great success with our remote learning platform, but we're looking very much forward to getting back on campus in person. Also joined today, moderating the chat today is my colleague Xander, who is one of Gnomon's amazing advisors. Our advisory team is available to you today to answer any Gnomon related questions in the chat. In addition, if you're interested in Gnomon, it's good for you to know that our advisors actually offer portfolio coaching, and we'll set up appointments to answer questions and talk about your art. And if you want to do that, Xander can certainly let you know how to do that in the chat today. We will be available. This stream is going to be available on demand on Gnomon's Twitch and YouTube channels after the live stream today. And if you're in need of closed captioning, you can, if you go over to our Facebook live feed, you will be able to get closed captioning there. And my colleagues will drop a link for that in the chat if you need that today. All right. So I have the honor of introducing our guest to you today, Kendrick See. And he is going to be showing us some really cool processes that he's using in Blender to create some beautiful visual development illustrations. Kendrick is a visual development and concept artist. He works in freelance. He's began his career as a concept artist for games and has previously worked on The Last of Us Part 2, Gears of War 4, Tales of Berseria, and The Elder Scrolls Legends. Nowadays, he enjoys working on stylized projects. So with that, I would like to welcome Kendrick to the stream. Kendrick, thank you for joining us today.
Hey.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. So yeah, and you are located where, sir?
I'm located in Malaysia right now.
Wow, yeah. So it's pretty early in the morning for you then, I would guess.
Yes, it is.
All right. Well, thank you very much for making the time to be with us. We're really looking forward to seeing what you have to show us today. I know that you're going to be showing us a little bit about your process in Blender for some of the illustrations you've done. But before we get into that, would you mind just taking a minute or two just to share a little bit about you and your background, how you got into art and into doing what you do?
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, I started okay. Actually, I did. I'll end up in art. But then because there's a art school nearby my hometown, so I just went there, and then as I go through the course, I started in animation actually, and then
okay,
yeah. As I go through the course, and then I realized that animation is not what I wanted. I like to paint more because I can create. So that's why and then I found that time a video from Fengju, FCD, and then
fantastic channel on YouTube.
Yes, and then I started to get into concept art, and then I started to learn painting there, and then that's pretty much it, I guess.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I think if we can get your screen share up, would you mind just scrolling through your ArtStation for us really quick? Because we're going to look closer, I think, at about 3 pieces of yours, but it's just nice to take a look at the larger collection of some of the stuff that you've done.
Oh, yeah. So, this is one of my earliest work. This piece got me into the industry because one of the studio in Malaysia saw this, and then they hired me, and then
very cool.
That's when I started my journey. And then these are some of the personal pieces. At first I used a lot of photo bashing due to my lack of painting skill, I think. So most of my earlier
Okay.
pieces have like heavy photo collages in them, something like this. Yeah, it's
Mm-hmm.
these are for yeah. So yeah, these are quite
Cool.
heavy in photo collages.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then
Beautifully
after that,
executed, though. Yeah.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, and then I found out that this sort of stuff is not what I enjoy doing. So, and then I like to paint. So
Mm.
I started diving more into painting, and then yeah, also stylized stuff. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
these are some of my older work.
Yeah, and I don't want to give too much away, but when I first found you on ArtStation, was looking at your artwork. I thought the illustrations were really cool, and then I started realizing that you were doing some of these that looked like straight up digital paintings. You were starting them in Blender, and so I was really fascinated
Yep,
about how you go about doing that. And I know that's what you're going to be sharing with us about today. So
yep.
yeah, and I think I have one last question. I think that might be of interest to some of our viewers, because I know we have a lot of international viewers on the stream. Um, how did you discover, like, how did you market yourself or get discovered to work on some of these awesome games that you've worked on while being overseas? I know that sometimes that can be a challenge. Was it a challenge for you?
Mm, I I'm not sure. Hmm.
Or
I
did just
think
kind of one job lead to the next? You got discovered by that one studio, and then everything just kind of started connecting you?
I think visiting events is one of the
Hmm.
key. Yeah. Knowing people. Yeah, networking is important. I yeah.
Yeah.
I visited IFCC in Croatia, and then also industry workshop from London, and then
Yeah. Okay.
after that most of my work are recommended by my peers, and then yeah, I got lucky there, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think that's great. The takeaway there is just make the most of whatever opportunities you do have to network. Don't look at what you can't do, but just look at what you can and make the most of that. And it's really cool that you've already. I mean, I know that you're going forward full steam, but you've already worked on some really amazing stuff. So yeah, I'm going to pass the mic to you now, Kendrick, and why don't you take us in and show us some of these projects that you want to highlight for us today.
Oh,
Oh, and guys, I should mention also in the chat, please feel free to drop your questions for Kendrick in the chat. We'll see if we can address them in context. Otherwise, we will also be taking a little time after Kendrick has presented to bring up as many of the questions as we can. All right. Yeah, go for it, Kendrick.
all right. So so this is the first one that I prepped for today. So usually I start my pieces with assets like this. I have them kind of modeled. I also reuse stuff from previous pieces, and then I just arrange them in some order like this. When I create my
Mm-hmm.
piece, I just copy and paste them into the scene, and then just arrange them accordingly to what I'm looking for. And
And are you building these assets in Blender? Are you building them, or are you importing assets, or combination of the two?
oh, when I just started, I made everything myself. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So for this is all of them are made by myself because I was just starting to learn Blender. So these are like the very early work that I have with Blender. Oops. Let me open this. Yeah. So yeah, this is the first scene.
Mm-hmm.
So this is how it looked. So it's plain. I put there with some particle system of the what do you call this? The mesh? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
a plane.
the
Yeah,
grass and the yeah.
yeah. It's just a plane, and then I use a particle system to spread it around,
Mm-hmm.
get this sort of effect. Yeah, and then these rocks are also particle system, so I just put it there. Yeah, after that I just set up my camera.
And are you doing? Presuming you're doing all of this real time in Eevee in Blender, is that right?
Yes, all EV render. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, EV is quite good actually because although the lighting is not that accurate, but it's easily tweaked in Photoshop later on. So yeah, this is how it looked after I rendered the scene, and then I just painted over to get a better color, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for like
Yes.
for instance, for the soldier that's there, like how simple are those shapes in Blender? How simple is that geometry to begin with?
Oh, because I don't know how to model characters. It's I think quite simple.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great though. But you've got
Yeah.
some. I just think you've got some great settings set up for a stylized type of render in camera in Eevee. There, you're getting some beautiful colors to work with in your painting.
Yeah. So with this as a base, I just paint over and then accentuate the color I get to make it more
Mm-hmm.
vibrant. Because for some reason the render in Eevee are usually quite desaturated or not as vibrant. So I like it to be vibrant. So I just tweak it in Photoshop later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's some artists that tweak everything in Blender. You can actually do that, but I think it takes a little while. Like there's a curve here they can use to like make everything more bright and saturated.
But so since your kind of the final result for you is always going to be a 2D image, you just find that is it
Yeah.
faster for you to do most of those adjustments once you bring it into Photoshop then?
Yes. Yes. That's precisely. So I just usually do the render and then import it into Photoshop, and then I just paint over them. And then
Cool.
yeah, the first thing that I usually go for are the edges, because usually it's the edges that make 3D. So like
Mm-hmm.
these sharp corners and stuff, and then I just painted over them to make them
Mm-hmm.
rounder and less sharp to get the two 2D feel to make it look like
Yeah.
an actual painting. So yeah, the same goes for yeah.
And then are you when you take your render from Blender and you bring it into Photoshop for painting, are you bringing in multiple layers? Are you using any of the compositing features to create masks and things like that, or are you just bringing one image in and then painting over it?
Yeah, for this I just render a flat image and then I just paint over everything. Yeah.
Wow,
Because
yeah,
yeah,
that's so simple. I love it.
yeah. Because I think apparently this style works because everything is like sharp. You can just use the one tool to like select, and then you'll have a proper selection if you select it in Photoshop. So in that sense,
Hmm.
it's easy just for this sort of style. But I guess
Yeah.
like yeah, maybe some other style that have softer edges, then you might need to have a separate layer. Yeah.
What I like about what you're doing though is number one, you don't have it. I mean, the I think the expertise here is, and I don't know how advanced you are with Blender, but the expertise more is in composition and creating, excuse me, telling a story with your image. So your modeling is fairly simple. The assets you're using in Blender are fairly simple, but really it's about setting up the camera and getting the composition just right, because then you're going to bring all of that over to Photoshop.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, that's my main focus usually when I set up the scene. And then
Mm-hmm.
yeah, most of the time I'll have the camera on another screen like this. If you
Yeah, you kind of just keep your camera view always open as a separate window so you can
Yeah,
see
yeah. So
what's happening. Yeah.
I'll just like move things around to make sure like it matches like the comp,
Hmm.
and then after that I just render.
Yeah. And before you go into Blender, are you like sketching out a thumbnail in 2D? Do you start in 2D to get your idea, or you just go straight into Blender?
Okay, for this project I actually
Hmm.
started without any sketch because I did this last year, and then back then I was doing a post a day for the 365-day challenge.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, I just went in without any sketch. But yeah, if there's a sketch, you'll definitely be more. Uh, there'll be more detail, I guess, more storytelling and more planning because of more planning.
Hmm.
But for this
But I
one,
take it this
yeah.
wasn't your first piece in Blender. You're already familiar enough with Blender that you could be comfortable enough to just to compose in the software rather than sketching out a thumbnail.
Oh yeah, luckily because
Hmm.
I was an animation major back then. I learned
Hmm.
Maya, and then I used Maya for at least before diving into Blender.
Hmm.
That's I think that's one of the reason why I get used to Blender quite easily, I guess.
Gotcha. So yeah, you kind of had you already had a foundational knowledge of 3D and understanding of painting and composing a 2D image. So
Yep.
you really put those two skills together. I see. Yeah,
Yes. Yep.
that's really cool.
Thank you.
Let's see. Right.
Thank you.
I know we've had a couple of questions come in along the way here. Um, let's see. Drawn Skull is asking any tips on becoming. I know we're not talking about animation today, but they're wondering on becoming a 2D animator. Do you have any tips? What should they do to get started? They are mostly drawing lots of characters, and they're wondering if you can give some tips on what they should be studying next if they want to be an animator.
Oh, for being an animator, I learned that walk cycle is really important.
Hmm.
So usually for starting animators, we'll do a lot of walk cycles in the beginning. So getting walk right is, I'd say, is one of the most important thing for 2D animation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
To
also
take
in
and
3D.
even
Yeah,
take time to observe that in the natural world. Like if you're drawing characters that aren't moving, watch watch people walking and watch
yeah,
animals
yeah,
walking. And yeah, gotcha.
yeah.
Cool. Um, and is there anything else you wanted to tell us about this project here?
Yeah. So usually because I'm posting every day, so I think it's quite time consuming to build everything from scratch. That's
Hmm.
why there is of work here, which I just reuse the assets and
Hmm.
then just use different camera angles for it to have something quick. So in real life work, this is also something to utilize. So you can have multi pins and camera angles to show to the art director. So you just set up one scene and then you have everything done for you. Just move the camera around. Then you
Yeah, that's a really
yeah,
good point too. I know
yeah,
that on occasion, especially people who think more like 2D illustrators that are using 3D, they'll set up one amazing scene and then they'll only render one image from it
yeah,
because we're thinking. I know I've done that. We're thinking painting, but if you've gone to the trouble to build all of this, you might as well get a bunch of great images from it and tell a story.
yep. Yep. So yeah,
Awesome.
for this, as you can see, it's quite simple because it's like the first day I spent a few hours on it, and then the next day I'm like, oh, wouldn't it be nicer if I have more trees? So I just added more
Mm.
trees to the scene.
Hmm.
Yeah. So technically the rock, if you notice, it's almost the same position. And then I just move. And then for this third image, I just move the camera to the top to get another render.
Now, for some of the shading and texturing you have on the trees, there is more of a Blender related question. You've got a nice patterning going there. Are you just looking up images, like 2D images, and then projecting those onto the trees?
Oh, you mean for this?
For some of the striping on the trees and things like that.
Ah, yeah, no, it's actually, yeah, because when I started this project, I wanted to this sort of look from my painting, my old paintings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I just tried around with the notes to see if I can get something similar,
Okay.
and then I apparently just came out with this sort of look.
So you just did all of that right in Blender, maybe with some color ramping or things like that in the nodes?
Yes, it's actually
Okay.
noise. I just stretch out the
Okay.
noise.
I got it.
Let me,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's great.
let me
And then
see
I
if I
take
can.
it once you've made, like, you made all the stuff for the scene, once you've made something, do you also save out individual pieces that you can use later in other projects, like kind of save out your trees and rocks and things like that?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Okay.
Let me see. Oh yeah. So yeah, these are like the notes. I just use this the texture node in. So if we just put it here without the color, it looks like this.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
So
I know from some previous Blender streams that we've done. I think I'm sure that watching the stream today, we already have a lot of Blender enthusiasts, because it's a pretty close community. But for those of you who might be more, painters in 2D but not using Blender, I know that some of the stuff that Kendrick's showing us in the nodes and things like that can look really overwhelming at first. But it's just like anything else. It's like when you had to learn Photoshop for the first time. If you learn enough of how to use those tools, it's actually quite straightforward to get the results that you need. I mean, would you agree, Kendrick?
yeah. I actually find find making these notes fun because it's like Photoshop layer, as you can
Mhm.
see. Yeah, there's a lighten.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it actually is kind of artistic. I know that for myself using the nodes, I'm not, have all the knowledge of the nodes, but sometimes it's just fun to get in there and start messing with sliders and things, not knowing what the result is going to look like, but just seeing how it affects your image.
Yes, yeah, definitely. Yeah, so for this, right? Like as you can see, this color, right? Just
Hmm.
ignore this graph here. So so if you have a this one will be if it's in Photoshop, this will be the base layer with the color, this
Hmm.
tree, and then when you put it into another node like this, then this will become the lighten layer,
Okay,
and
yeah, I
then
see that.
and and then you put another node in. That means this will become the lighten layer on top of another layers, so it will overlap. So it's in some sense it's like Photoshop's layer.
Okay,
Yeah,
so yeah, you do have you have some of these settings that are very similar to the blend modes in Photoshop, like lighten, multiply, and so
yeah.
forth.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
I think in
And then
Blender
oh,
it's
go ahead. Sorry.
I
No,
think in
sorry. You go
Blender,
ahead.
yeah, I think in Blender, right, this node system is way easier than the ones I used back in Maya. So it's
Okay.
quite intuitive to artists that wants to learn the how to use this. You can find a lot of tutorials in on YouTube too for it. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, that's one of the things I really do like about Blender is there's a tremendous amount of resource out there because the software is free. There's a huge community. There's lots and lots of tutorials.
Yep. Yeah. That's
Awesome.
that's one of the why I learned Blender too. It's
Hmm.
easy to troubleshoot. It saves a lot of time, especially when you're on a project, and then you just Google it, and then you have a whole list and forums um, of solution for you to help you with your project. Yeah.
I just wanted to mention to the chat, for those of you who might be getting a little bit more of a pixelated video quality, we apologize for that. That is something that is outside of the scope of our control to a certain degree. A lot of that has to do with all the different internet speeds from each of us who are on the stream. So hopefully that can clear up a bit as well. Now you spoke earlier about when you get your render out of Blender and you have this great 2D composition and you bring that into Photoshop. You had mentioned the first thing that you pay attention to is your edges. You kind of decide what you need to paint to control the edges. What do you do after that?
So for this particular style, I finish fixing all the edges to make it round. I just add more definition to the form. The clouds, as you can see here, it's all right, but it's not good enough. So get more flowy. So because in 3D sometimes it's hard to get a composition that points to a certain direction that you're looking for.
Yeah, so you kind of start art directing it.
Yeah, so you need to paint it yourself. So this is what I've done. I just make sure the floor is right. Yeah, the floor. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're taking that render, and as soon as you get the render into Photoshop, after that point, you're thinking of it just as a 2D painting, and it's kind of like you're underpainting, and then you can color pick and decide what you want to use to continue the painting.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's great.
Yes. So yeah, so like some of the effects, something like this, right? It might be too consuming to do it in 3D, so I just do it in 2D for most of them. Yeah. So it's the same for all of this.
And I think that's another really good point you're bringing up for people who are more used to painting in 2D but are interested in using 3D to create images and similar kind of process to what you're using. The bonus as well is, you don't. I think we get intimidated by 3D because we think we have to make it look as perfect as one of our paintings in 3D, but you don't necessarily have to. You have to just get what you need in 3D so that you can use your painting skills afterwards. So, just based on some of what you've said already, it would seem that if you have basic understanding of Blender and how to make shapes and things like that, it really comes down to getting the composition and then deciding how you want to use those shapes to make a painting.
Yep. Yes.
Cool.
Precisely. Yep.
Yeah, great. No, this is a beautiful piece.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So after I finish a project, this is I just add it to the library, so it will look something like this.
That's the other thing that's nice about 3D. You only have to make it once.
Yeah.
As soon as you've made it, then you can use it again later.
Yeah. Yeah, this is the next one, the next piece.
Yeah, I apologize for the video quality, guys. I know that when we were testing this out earlier, it was going great, but one can never tell how the internet will behave based on the time of day.
So this is the other scene. It'll take a while to load out the materials.
Now, I had a question for you, and if you're going to talk about this later, then by all means, feel free to say, I'll get to that later, Adam. But when you're getting this really stylized look in Blender, how are you approaching your lighting? Is the lighting fairly simple? How are you setting that up?
Oh, so I'm glad that you asked. For this sort of look, it relies on a certain way you connect your nodes, and then it wouldn't be as good as a normal render that you have in 3D, which is a
Mhm.
realistic render. So I
Right.
usually just use just use one lamp, and then it's in Blender it's the sun, and then I just point it in a single direction to get the shadows.
Hmm.
Is that the did I answer the question?
Yeah, and it looks like you're controlling your shadows to. I mean, there is a little bit of fading at the edge of your shadows, but it looks like you're intentionally trying to get fairly flat shadows, so
Ah
there's not a
yes,
lot of gradients. Okay,
yes, yes.
yeah. And then one of our viewers was wondering in the chat, are all of the assets that you're using, everything in the scene, is that all made in 3D? Or are you making some of your stuff in grease pencil?
Yeah, at this point it's all made in 3D because I haven't used
Okay.
pencil yet.
Okay.
So yeah, but like this tree comes from Blender have a plugin called Sapling, and then yeah, it will generate this sort of trees.
Oh, okay. I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
I've seen
yeah,
that plugin before. You don't have to necessarily by hand go in and like control every teeny little branch coming out. It sort of
yeah.
generates it for
Let
you.
me enable. Yeah,
Mhm.
Sapling. Oh, it's enabled. Where is it at? Curves. Oh yeah. The tree. Um,
While we're letting that load in, one of our viewers is wondering, typically, how long does it take to create all of the assets being used in a piece? And how many assets do you try to have on hand? Like, if you're having to make something from scratch, like a scene like this, how much time are you spending just making each individual part?
for this scene, it took me a few days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I actually started with one of these, and then I'm like, hey, it looks interesting. So I just
Mm-hmm.
kept the wall, and I did the second one, and after that I
Oh, cool.
did another one, and
Are
then
these are like little thumbnails you're making in Blender to
yep,
explore what you can do with your scene? Is that right? That's awesome.
yes,
That's great.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, this is one of the way you can approach your, and then yeah,
Mm-hmm.
eventually you can combine all of them and make it into a full scene. Yeah. So this sapling tree, yeah, it's from Blender. You can just change your preset, like you can load like different trees. Yeah. So you can,
Yeah, it's so
yeah.
cool too when you zoom out like this and you can see that like you've just made only what you need to be in
Yeah.
camera. You
Yes.
know, I think that's also a really good tip that I've heard quite often is like, don't make it if you don't need it.
Yep. Yeah, because if you make like the whole thing, it will be it will be tacked on your system, your machine, so
Mm-hmm.
so it won't render as fast as you want. So
Mm-hmm.
it's good to just everything that you need, and then yeah, then just render the thing that is in the camera. Yeah, and then delete the
And I
rest.
love what yeah, I love
Yeah.
what you've done to get the dappled lighting effect too, where you kind of it looks like you just created a couple of two-dimensional cards as like filters for your light.
Oh yes, I learned this from an artist by the name of Jan Urschel. Uh, so
Yeah, he's great.
he's great. Yeah, he's great. So I just use it. Yeah, it's a
Mm-hmm.
really neat trick to get the dapple light for sure. And then yeah, it's
And if
only two
somebody
planes. Yeah.
if somebody wants to go and learn some of that stuff for themselves, would that just be going to Jan's Gumroad, or where did you go to find that?
Mm, I I think you can find it in YouTube, but Jan definitely offers some of the very useful tricks that he used for his concept. He does realistic stuff, but yeah. So
And I'm going to
if you're
drop in the
interested,
chat Jan's name for those of you who might not be familiar.
Yep.
If you search for Jan Urschel, search YouTube, search Gumroad, Jan's got a lot of really great content for learning this type of stuff.
Yes, he's great, man. Yeah, I learned a lot from his tutorial, and then I just applied them to. He does realistic stuff, so I just translated the main idea onto the style that I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, one of them is this trick here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and so this scene, at least to my eye, is a little bit more complex than the previous one. When you are bringing your final rendered image into Photoshop for painting, are you approaching it the same way, or because you've got this dappled lighting, you've got a lot more shapes to work with?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so you just go in and start refining your edges and kind of work from big to small?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, yeah. Mostly, most of the render, what I usually do is just to eliminate anything that makes anything that gives off, and then after that I'll add more details to the piece. Like for this, for example, like the signboard is a plain white board, and then usually I'll just fix the edge and stuff, and then I'll go in to add all these tiny details that is not seen in the scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I also just love how you have adjusted your colors in Photoshop. I think it's really vibrant colors, but not just color for color's sake. It's all very complementary and looks really nice.
Yeah. So
yeah.
Actually, this piece is based on a picture that I took back in Japan. So I like how it looks, and then I just kind of reference it here and there, and then just
so you're working from reference, obviously, and then you're stylizing that.
Yes. Yeah. So
now,
so
one of our viewers is
go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to say, one of our viewers is wondering, do you use different types of render passes in Blender? I know, for instance, Blender has freestyle, which lets you get like a line drawing effect and things like that. Are you utilizing any of those tools?
Yes. Eventually, I started trying out freestyle. So this is one of the pieces that I did in freestyle, with freestyle on. Few examples.
Oh, nice.
But it's not perfect, so I still need to go in and fix some of the stuff. But mostly it's from the render. Yeah. Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's something that's I know that for myself has been a growth edge. Josh Herman at Gnomon has been helping me understand, just because you made it in 3D doesn't mean that it's perfect. And when if you're going to turn it into a 2D image, like, use the fact that you can paint and that you can draw and change things.
Yeah, you can make it perfect, but it will take you a long time in an actual game production or movies, right? They'll spend like a few months on just a single scene or character. But if you're going to make this in one sitting, like I think I made this one in a few hours, so it's impossible to get everything perfect in 3D in a few hours. So you have to paint over stuff here and there. Yep. Yeah.
Now, have you ever? I know that there's some artists that are using Quixel mega scans, and they're getting those mega scans to render more stylized in Blender. Like, you just grab a whole city wall or a mountain or a large rock or something like that. Have you started playing around with that?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Awesome. I figured you did.
Yeah. So I actually prepared, just in case, I prepared this scene here.
Mm-hmm.
So let me
Oh, look at that.
open it up. So yeah, all these rocks are from Megascans. The tree branches too. Let me load it.
It's like it's still loading. That's fine.
Yeah.
Well, and while we're waiting for that to load, you're bringing up, I think, by association, some really great points, and that is to get into 3D doesn't mean that you have to know how to make everything yourself. There's so many great things that are already made, like Quixel Megascans, assets, even whole preset scenes in Blender that already have a lot of the rendering set up. So if you're wanting to get into this, you don't have to learn everything to be able to get some results right away. You just take a look at a stream like this with Kendrick, some of the tutorials that are out there, and you can start having fun fairly soon. You'll have to learn. You'll still have a learning curve to go through, but it really can be fun from the beginning.
Yeah, that's a good thing about 3D, right? It's really easy to get into because if you're painting everything from scratch, you need to have mileage, and then you need to be
Mm-hmm.
practicing maybe for a really long time to get good at it. But for 3D, you can just get into it and then get a decent result immediately. And then the more time you spend, it'll
Mm-hmm.
just be improving from there onwards.
Yeah, and working in 3D, can also teach you a lot about composition, just like photography can, because you're doing the same thing as in photography. You're putting objects in front of a camera and figuring out what makes that scene look pleasing to the eye. So the more you work in 3D trying to set up a scene, the more you're going to get mileage on understanding what makes something look good and what makes something look bad, depending on what angle you're looking at it from.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so here comes the scene.
Yep. So
So you said
yeah,
all of the
this
rocks are megascans?
yeah, all of the rocks are from Megascans.
Mm-hmm.
All of the rocks, all of the trees. I mean the branches
Yeah.
here. Yeah.
So you just got to bring these in and just play with them, just move them around. You didn't have to make
Yeah.
them. You can just go right to work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before this, I always make my own assets. And this is one of the first few pieces that I started experimenting with Megascan.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, it works too. You can just import the Megascan
Mm-hmm.
into
And
the
without
scene.
getting too technical, are you, when you bring the Megascan in, because I know that those also come in with their own very high resolution, surfaces and textures. Are you kind of ignoring that information and then doing the same thing you're doing with your other scenes, using the nodes to set up really simple colors and things?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I just ignore the resolution of the model,
Mm-hmm.
and then I just go ahead and arrange it according to the composition I want, and then I just
Mm-hmm.
render it out.
Cool.
Yeah, so yeah,
And
that's
what
that's
you may have put it up on the screen earlier, but what does the final image look like from this?
final image. The final image looks like. I'm not sure if I have it here. Oh, oh yeah, looks something like this. This is the final render. Yeah.
Oh yeah, look at
Maybe,
that. That's really fun. There's probably so many different scenes you can get out of just what you have set up there in Blender. That's a nice hero shot.
yeah. Let me look for the ones that I painted all. Oh, yeah, Blender can also do uh, this sort of paint.
Ah, yeah.
Let me look it up. yeah. So
Well, and even for those of us, who know how to set up a scene just in 2D as a painter, just blocking out your values and your shapes and composing that way. That's great. I think the thing that's fun about what you're doing, Kendrick, is you can surprise yourself with things you might not have thought of. Once you get everything in camera and you start moving around, you can see different combinations.
oh
Um,
yeah.
for the composition of your painting. And for me anyway, it's proven to be very useful to help me get out of sort of what I typically tend to want to do with my paintings and try something new.
Yes. Like this sort of angles are usually really hard to draw. So with
Hmm.
3D you can achieve this like low angle or this high angle is also quite hard to draw. Yeah, with 3D you can
Right. All
get
the
this
all the
sort of
foreshortening that's
yeah,
happening there. Yeah.
yeah, definitely. Yes. Usually if you paint from scratch you just look like this, like flat view or like this. But if
Hmm.
you have 3D
Hmm.
you can just move the camera around and then you can get a more interesting shot, which is really helpful.
Hmm. Well, and yeah, and I know that you're not saying that it's definitely worth learning how to paint that stuff without the aid of 3D, if that's what
Yep.
you want to do. But I think, this art being for visual development, kind of concepting out the look of a scene and what something could look like for production, you're going to need to work fast. And so when you can get results that would normally take a really long time and get them quickly, that's super helpful.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. Like even if you get this angle right, and then if you don't
Hmm.
know how to if you do not know how to paint the foreshortening or you don't have any knowledge, it might be a little bit tricky too. So you need to
Hmm.
have both at least some knowledge on painting too
Hmm.
to get this sort of result. Yeah.
Now, I know that you've got another piece to show us, and we've got some good questions coming in, so I want to be respectful of
Yep.
your time. But if you want to prepare your next piece, we've got a question that's come in that maybe you can help address a little bit later. And that is one of our viewers is curious to know a little bit more about your process once you bring that image into Photoshop. And you don't have to demo anything for us, but if you can tell us a little bit more about some of the steps that you go through when you're painting over that render.
Oh, no problem. So let me open a scene. Oh, oh, oops. Anyway, I accidentally clicked on Photoshop and started running.
I've done that several times myself. And then you have to
Yeah.
wait for the software to start.
Yeah, yeah. So usually my painting process is the where finish the render and then I fix all the edges and then I just
Hmm.
go in and put in all the details and then make sure all the flow of the image is correct. Like let's say if this is the focal point, I want them to be pointing towards this direction,
Hmm.
and then yeah, and then I just use one brush most of the time, one or two brushes.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I think that's about it. Is there any
Yeah.
specific part of the process that the person who asked the question would like to know?
Yeah, let's see. Why don't you go and type that in the chat? We'll see if we can address that. But I'm also just hearing you say that like once it's in Photoshop, you're just approaching it like a painter would approach a painting.
Yep.
Um, you might tweak some of your color values, but from there it's mostly brushwork, edge control, composition.
Yes. It's because a lot of the stuff is already done in 3D for most part. So usually if you're putting it into Photoshop, it's just tidying up all the loose knots here,
Mm-hmm.
and then
Mm-hmm.
that's about it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and it's so important. I think what you're pointing towards is, and our viewer said that your answer helped a lot. It was great. Help clear up their questions. But a lot of what we're seeing here is the time that you've taken to learn how to have a good composition, how to make a strong image that points the viewer's eye to where it needs to go. But then also a big part of this is painting skills. You've
Yep.
learned how to paint. It's a great point because 3D can do a lot. It can cover a lot of ground for you in your process. But at the end of the day, foundational art skills are what is going to help you make a great image out of your 3D tools.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly like what you say. 3D is just a tool to help. Yeah. So yeah, this is the next piece. This one is actually also from last year. It was for the Lightbox Expo challenge back in Art Station.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So for this, I spent a longer time developing it compared to the rest. And see, like I actually started with a brainstorm of like keywords and stuff to search for, like right here. Because it's what was it again? I think it was mystery box. Yeah, the theme was mystery
Yeah, I
box.
remember that.
Yeah. And then I do not know what is the mystery box about, so I just go by random stuff to start the artwork
This
with.
is a great part of the process to see too. That
Yes.
it sometimes doesn't get highlighted as much as it should. A lot of times we'll watch a demo or a tutorial on YouTube and we only see the fancy part,
Yeah.
But a part of making a great image is all this research that you're doing and thinking,
Yes.
and making decisions before you get into the more technical work.
Yeah. Like last time I didn't do this often, but I realized it is really important because you it's like a list of stuff that you can go back to look for, because if sometimes when you think about stuff, you might just remember it at the moment, and then after you just forget about it. So it's good to list the list down so you can go back and
Yeah.
I wrote this down, so it might be something interesting to add to, and then you can revisit it anytime in between the process, right?
Definitely. Yeah. And when you've got these kind of notes, when you've captured all your ideas like that, it's okay if you forget about them later. But if you're working on the piece and you
Yep.
get stuck, if you
Yes.
have something like this to come back to, you never have to worry about, getting stuck and not being able to get out.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. It's a common
Yeah, that's awesome.
occurrence. Yeah. So yeah,
Oh
after
yeah.
this, yeah, usually I'll just start with a rough thumbnail exploration for the scene. So these are quite rough, and then from here I'll select like maybe one of them, and then yeah, the one I selected was this one, I think, and this one, these two, 8 and 9, and then I just yeah, I just flesh it out further, and then I also try to visualize it, like how it looked in top view, and then
Oh yeah, right.
yeah,
Because you're gonna have to set it up. You're thinking about that. That's
yes,
great.
yes. So I'll estimate the position of the camera, which is this one here, and then where it's pointing approximately to get this sort of view. And then with this, it will help a lot when you dive into 3D. You can just place everything around accordingly. Yeah. And then yeah, I did some.
Yeah, I have a good friend who always says, "Solve your problems while they're small."
Yes.
Don't wait until
Yeah.
don't wait until it gets really complex.
Yeah. This really helps a lot. Even for the game that I'm working now, it's a project that I'm working on now. The 3D artist will ask you to visualize the kind of the stage or the level first, and then
Mm-hmm.
from there they'll build the level, and then you set dress the level after. So
Mm-hmm.
you look
Well,
something like this and more detailed sometimes. Yeah.
and that's a good thing to note. A lot of the concept work that you've done has been for environments, for games.
Yes.
So you're
Yeah.
you're using all those skills when you're setting up these visual development pieces. You're spending a lot of time thinking about the space and
Yeah.
what it's going to look like from different angles.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. These are just some miscellaneous sketch of plants that I initially wanted to add them to the scene, but I don't think I
Mm-hmm.
use any of them. Maybe this one here and this one. And then yeah. So after this is done, I just build it in the scene. So
Mm-hmm.
these are the three initial renders. Oops, just drag it to the side. So yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, so I just build it one step at a time. Like the centerpiece is usually the, because it's the main focus, like here. So I just build it in 3D.
Mm-hmm.
Initially, I started quite near to this view in the front, something like this, and then and then after that, I just move around the camera to look for a better angle, and then that's when I came out with three of this. And then after that, I just pick one to move forward with, and then I start to do a rough color blocking and to see if the composition is uh is all right. Like, is it good? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the very early ones. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
this one should be here.
One of our viewers just mentioned in the chat about studying frames from films is a great way to build up your composition skills, which I'm sure you've looked at that as well.
Yes,
Uh,
yes,
and yeah, and for those of you who haven't really, don't really know where to start, a great way to do it is, to think about the kind of image you want to make, and then think of a movie that has similar types of content, and then look at frames from that movie, because every frame in a film is well thought through. At least it should be. And you can borrow some of those compositions and then apply it to what you're making, and you can start to backwards engineer why that works so well.
yep, yeah. So I just painted this.
Mm-hmm.
After that, I added stuff here. Initially, this was the shot that I wanted to go with, but
Mm-hmm.
for some reason I feel that it was missing something. It doesn't look the scene doesn't look wide enough. So eventually, I just did another camera. I pulled it up from all the way from, I think, somewhere here to like here. Yeah, it's
Mm-hmm.
pretty far away to get this shot.
Ah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
that's definitely much more grand.
yeah, yeah. This one is too close to the tree, so yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, I changed it to this, and then yeah, because it's you can also mess around with your. Let me let me see if I can go into the camera view. Oops. You can just mess around with the focal length.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very helpful. Click this one. 50. Yeah, so the usually in Blender the starting length is 50. 50 is
Yeah.
great for portraits usually, but
Mm-hmm.
for wide shots usually it's around 25, 35 to 25. yeah, to know this, usually you also need to study photographers, especially if you're doing landscape. You'll be landscape photographers, or if you're doing portraits, it'll be models, photographers that take photos of those, and then you can learn a lot
Mm-hmm.
from how they take their pictures, and then
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, a lot of those photography websites, they'll let you know what length lens they used to get
yes,
the photo
yeah,
they got, and it's
yeah,
another great way to learn.
yes, yeah. It's really convenient.
Or just go take a lot of pictures yourself. Take a course in photography, and learn
Yes,
about taking great landscape photos if that's what you want to paint.
yeah, yeah. Also about movie studies, right? Yeah, just now you mentioned about movie studies. Sometimes I think the art director will list down like what sort of equipment they use, and then the focal length
Mm.
that they use. Yeah, those are also
Hmm.
good info to know and to read about, and then it will definitely help you when you're developing your pieces, especially when you're using 3D. Yeah, so
Yeah. Well, before I know we've been at it for about an hour, and I want to respect your time. But
yeah,
we've had a couple of questions come in that I think we should definitely devote some time to answering. And one of them is, let's see here. Uh, are there some tutorials that you recommend that you can remember that you've done yourself if you want to learn how to do what you're doing in Blender, kind of setting up your scene and making compositions in Blender?
oh, there's a few big Blender tutorials. I mean the
Mm-hmm.
channels. One of them is Blender Guru. Blender Guru is one of them. And then for this specific look, right? This is this look is usually called an NPR.
Mm-hmm.
NPR.
Non-photoreal.
Yeah, non-photoreal. Non-photo non-photoreal render, I think is the term. Yeah. So if
Yeah,
you
you can
Google,
just search that.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, on YouTube you find like how to set up like scenes with this sort of look.
Mm-hmm.
And then yeah, so these are the process. Technically it's all of them are just painting over the edge and adding more details, and then add more details, and then adding more details. So yeah,
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 but you're starting with a great foundation, and that's I know that in the early days for me, a mistake that I would make a lot with paintings and compositions is start with too much detail before I
yeah,
had a strong foundation. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So as I progress, right? Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
if I feel like the scene maybe something is missing, I'll go back into 3D and edit in, and then render it out again, and then just do a overlay on top of the old one, and then I just mask out the
Mm-hmm.
parts that I want, and then yeah, since the camera angle is changed, you can just add anything you want anyway in 3D, and
Mm-hmm.
then get it out, and then put it on top of your painting, and just move
Oh
forward
yeah.
from there. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and
Oh,
yeah,
that's really
and
good.
then for this scene, I started with view, right, and then for the second shot, since it's in 3D, I can just like pick a random location, and then I want a house here, and I just put in a house.
Mm-hmm.
Oops. Let me click this. Yeah, and then you can have a house wherever you want, and have your background already done for you because it's in the same 3D scene. So
Yeah,
yeah, so yeah, I just add it in and then just paint over.
that's awesome.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Another viewer is wanting
Yeah.
to know when you're creating your professional work, uh, and I know that the answer can be different depending on circumstances, but generally, how long does your process for layout take? And then if you get feedback and have to change a few things, how quick is the turnaround if you have to make a revision? So first question, how long does the layout process take? And then if you need to make a change based on a note from an art director, how long does that revision usually take you?
Oh, so far, right? Usually I'll spend a day for let's say three different layouts, and then for 3D you
Mm-hmm.
can, unless it's a totally different idea, then
Mm-hmm.
you might need more time. But usually if it's just strictly just layout, then you can just position the camera into like a few different spots and then render it out and then just send it
Mm-hmm.
over. Maybe a little bit of paint over on top and then send it over, and then that's about it.
Mm-hmm.
So usually one day, eight 8 hours work day for three
To get your layouts done.
yeah, three sketches.
Okay.
It's just a very rough layout, like maybe some blockings and stuff. It can be just square cubes and
Mm-hmm.
stuff. Yeah. After that, they'll like pick one of the layout that they like or the composition that they like, and then we'll move forward from there. Yeah.
And then if they want it at that stage, because it's usually really simple gray boxing and geometry, if they make a decision about they want the camera to be lower or they want it to be an upshot or something like that, it's just a matter of changing your camera angle, maybe moving a couple of
Yeah.
things.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So
I'm just looking through a backlog of questions here to make sure we're not missing anybody. And guys, if you do have any burning questions, now would be the time to type them into the chat before we wrap. I want to make sure everybody has a chance to kind of get their question in. But yeah, I don't want to cut you off either, Kendrick. What else? It sounds like you're about to tell us something.
Oh, not really. I'm just showing this up here. So,
Cool.
yeah.
Oh yeah, are these some of the studies that you did for
Yeah.
this scene?
It's like the breakdown
Awesome.
for the scene. Yep. So
Very
I think
cool.
that's about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
For this.
Well, a
Yeah.
question that I tend to like to close with on these streams is if you can imagine the viewers of this stream who are the ones that are maybe they're a high school student, or maybe they've already been spending some time learning art and they're in their first couple of years of community college, and they're looking at what you're doing and going, wow, that I would like to do this, and I would like to be able to do it professionally, whether that's doing like a layout for a game or the kind of work that you've done. What would you encourage people who are at the beginning of learning to spend their time learning at this point? What would you recommend?
I think observation is quite important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And just for those that might not be familiar with that in an academic sense, what would be a good way, like if you were going to work on your observation skills, especially for like a scene, what would you do?
Oh, so okay, like usually if I, let's say that there's a beautiful dapple light on the ground,
Mm-hmm.
I'll look at it and I'll say, I'll ask some questions. Why is this color red or blue or like purple?
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, I'll just analyze it. And then after observation, application is also important. I'll go back and then try to try to paint something that is similar to what I see in a piece.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I might set it up in 3D like this and then just paint over and get what and then
Maybe take a photo of it, what you were looking at in the real world, and then try to emulate that. One of the things that you said that I really appreciate is you just talked about taking a part of what you're looking at and paying closer attention to that. And I know that sometimes we can feel like observation means I have to find something that looks amazing and super complex and look at all of it at once and try to make a painting of it. But I like this idea of like, start small, break it down, look at one part of it, one thing that you like, and figure out how that works. And we can get so excited about making a big painting sometimes that we forget that it's what makes a great painting is a lot of really great small pieces that are all working together. So that reason why I'm bringing it up is what you just told us to do sounds very doable. You know, it's not as intimidating. Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, I was just about to say one of the great artists, if everyone knows about him, but I think he's pretty famous. His name is Kim Jung-gi.
Oh yeah,
That's also
he has a really
that's
big,
also the
strong
exact thing.
following in the States. Yeah.
Yeah. He also preached that. So let's say if you look at pen,
Mm-hmm.
you wanna like touch it and then just to see like why are the edges here and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and then observe it here and there, and then let's say if you look at the materials, and then you try to actions about why is it like this and why is it like that, and then
Mm-hmm.
in a long term you more the you put two and two together after you see more of the something similar. Then when you paint or like that have similar subjects, it will look really convincing because you did your observation prior. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That's so true. I think sometimes people think that, well, it's because he's so talented that he can draw the way that he does, and I'm sure there's some natural talent there, but there's a lot of hard work and application to get to that point. And the same thing is true in 3D. I remember a while back we had one of our education leads from Gnomon on the stream, Bo Jansen in VFX, and he was encouraging students that if they're making a portfolio and they're learning 3D, to not try to make a Game of Thrones dragon right away. Rather than making a Game of Thrones dragon that is kind of broken and not quite there, make a really amazing simple object like a pair of scissors or, like you said, a pencil or something like that, and make that really, really great. And I think that people that understand what they're looking for when they look at an artist's work will notice the skills, even if it's a simple object.
Yes.
Cool.
Definitely.
Well, Kendrick, thank you so much for taking the time today and being so generous talking about your process and what you do. And definitely, guys, I think my colleague Miranda can drop some social links in the chat for any of you guys that want to follow. Continue to follow Kendrick and the work that he's doing. I know that I'm following you on ArtStation because I'm not as much of a stylized painter, but I'm really getting inspired by the stuff that you're doing, and it makes me want to go try it in Blender myself. So yeah, and please stay in touch. Love to be able to do something with you again in the future. And yeah, any parting words or anything you wanted to say before we go?
Shout out to Dan. Thank you.
Yeah. Fellow recruiter Daniel Fadness here at Gnomon. Yeah, he's the one that recommended you to me. Yeah.
Yeah, and then also
Awesome.
Thank you for having me on.
Definitely, our pleasure.
Yeah.
It was really fun to look at your process. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Guys, my colleague or stream producer Miranda is going to. I think she's going to put a slide of one of our upcoming events up on the screen. But I'll pull that up on my web browser as well, just to let you guys know some of the stuff that's coming up here at Gnomon. One of our next streams of this sort that we are going to be doing, just a moment here. And Miranda, I don't know if we have that slide ready to show our viewers the events that are coming up here, but we have a really cool event where we're going to be bringing Jason Michael Hall back to the Gnomon stream. For those of you that caught the stream live, I remember a little while back, we just jumped in to look at a short animation film that he's doing called Secret Agent Man in Blender. And Jason's doing some really cool stuff, also stylized, also using Blender for stylization, but using for animation and blending 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional art. Yeah, here's the slide for that. So we're going to be bringing Jason back on Thursday, the 24th. That's just this next Thursday night coming up at 7:30 p.m. Pacific time. And Jason has gotten a lot further in his project. He's going to be showing us more than what he had last time, and he's going to be breaking down how he did it. So you definitely want to tune in on that. And if you're into Blender or you're curious about Blender, this will be one that you do not want to miss. And I want to say thank you again to Kendrick for showing us around Blender as well, and what we can achieve for painting, and getting some really cool stylized compositions going. So with that, everybody, I just want to wish you well. Continue to stay safe. We'd love to see, can't wait to see students on the Gnomon campus in the fall. And as things start to open up again, if you're interested in visiting the campus, if you want to know more about Gnomon, definitely reach out to one of our advisors. Xander is going to drop a link for you in the chat there as to how you can do that. But thank you to Kendrick. I'm Adam, and we'll see you here again soon. Thank you.
Thank you for having me on.